Welcome to our webinar on building mobile apps for your software product. Today we're going to discuss the reasons for going mobile and an overview of what a typical mobile project looks like. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat, or if you'd like to learn more about Optimist or get help with a project, please visit our website and connect with us. Here's an overview of today's agenda. We'll start by answering the simple question, why support mobile? From there, we'll walk through some of the early questions you'll face and what to expect when you begin the mobile development and testing efforts. We'll finish off this webinar with 3 case studies from recent projects that we've done for clients. These projects will exemplify the 3 different technical approaches, which we'll get into later. This webinar is a high-level overview of each of these topics. If you'd like to learn more about specific areas of any of these topics, keep an eye out for our upcoming webinars that'll dive deeper into each of these aspects. So why support mobile? There's no shortage of charts and graphs illustrating that mobile is booming. Here's an example showing of where we currently are on the growth curve. It's no doubt that mobile devices are proliferating throughout the workforce, and there are countless opportunities to improve workflows, efficiencies, and access to and quality of data. This graphic illustrates that 53% of organizations surveyed will be increasing their investment in wireless devices in the coming year. Of those, 70% purchase smartphones for employees and 51% invest in tablets. This increasing trend doesn't even account for BYOD, in which employees are bringing their own devices into the workplace and expect them to be supported. To meet this increasing demand for mobile-friendly solutions, software providers are looking to support a wider variety of platforms than ever before. Previously, it was acceptable to only offer fairly limited support. However, these days, especially on the mobile side, it's a growing expectation that the systems and data that are accessible on the desktop will be available on leading smartphones and tablets. In terms of business drivers for growing mobile, this survey conducted by Symantec indicates businesses' key drivers for adopting mobile devices and software. The number 1 reason, to increase efficiency. Some specific examples of this that we've worked on include data retrieval and entry by remote workers. On the one hand, imagine a worker out in the field that needs to look up a geo-referenced piece of information. Having direct access on their mobile device saves time and money by giving that employee immediate access to the information they need without having to call into the office. On the other hand, imagine a worker in the field that is capturing data. With a mobile device in hand, they can input the data directly into the back-end system without having to bring their paperwork back to the office for transcription. This improves both accuracy of the data and greatly reduces the amount of time it takes to become actionable. This brings us to mobile strategy and planning. Before beginning down the road of adding mobile support to your platform or enabling your workforce with mobile solutions, you'll need to understand the high-level objectives and create a medium and long-term roadmap. This exercise results in a product and platform roadmap that helps prioritize your development efforts. During this planning, the key business drivers meet with the technology opportunities to design an effective and efficient roadmap that takes advantage of emerging technologies and capitalizes on business opportunities. For a company just entering into the mobile space, this roadmap may start with smaller projects in order to measure results and see customer acceptance and ROI early on. Once the target audience is identified and the key business drivers determined, it's time to choose the right platform or mix of platforms. At a high level, here are 3 choices. First, there's native apps. These are the types of apps that we all download from our devices' app stores. For Apple, we download these from the App Store. For Android, we download these from Google Play. Native apps are built using that platform's specific technologies and are designed and developed for that platform alone. For example, applications built to run on iPhone and iPad are built using Objective-C in the Xcode IDE. Applications built for Android are developed using the Java programming language and generally built using Eclipse. True native apps are not deployed cross-platform, and they're very tailored for their specific platform. From user experience, usability to user interface design, all of those are very tailored to fit the specific platform that they're on. Web apps are essentially mobile websites that are accessible through a mobile device's browser. If you take out your iPhone and go to CNN.com in Safari, you'll see their mobile website. These apps are built using standard web languages and optimized to display content in a user-friendly manner on mobile devices. In some cases, these are simply responsive websites which display the same content in a different layout in order to better fit the screen. In other cases, these apps are complete redesign to create a different user experience for the mobile user. The last one is hybrid apps. Hybrid apps fall somewhere in the middle. There are different tools and technologies for developing hybrid apps, but essentially hybrid apps are developed using a standard language such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then ported to multiple platforms. For example, PhoneGap is a hybrid framework that enables developers to create web apps and package them as native apps for deployment into app stores. Hybrid apps are more powerful than web apps because they're not limited to the functionality of the browser. They get access to additional hardware features that help them improve performance, security, and functionality. This chart gives an overview of the pros and cons of each of these options. It is best to determine the technical approach after you've clarified the goals of the project. Then you can make an informed decision and design a roadmap that takes advantage of the appropriate options. For example, for many organizations, it makes sense to develop a mobile website first, then package that either into a native or hybrid app. We'll go deeper into these options in future webinars, but if you'd like to learn more now, please connect with us. When the overall approach has been determined, it's time to choose the specific devices to be supported. Android has taken a very strong position in the mobile space, and iOS has a stronghold amongst many of our peers. However, when choosing a platform, it's important to check with your target audience to identify the market share in their niche. For example, if you're targeting the finance industry, they may be more heavily using BlackBerries. At a high level, there's 3 options for choosing your mobile development team: either using your in-house team, bringing in extra contractors, or outsourcing the project, or at least aspects of it. This decision can largely be made by answering the following 3 questions. What are the skills of the in-house team? What is the opportunity cost of using the in-house team? How does that compare to bringing in extra resources or outsourcing? And lastly, what are the timelines and how can those be achieved? The answers to those 3 questions will clarify the best approach. In many cases, it'll be a mix of the 3, wherein the in-house team provides their expertise and a contractor or outsourcing partner takes ownership of specific areas such as design, development, testing, deployment, or support. Another approach is that the in-house team or specific teams take a certain platform and other groups or teams take another platform. When it comes to project methodology, here's a typical approach. Most projects begin with a discovery phase to do the high-level project scoping, where you determine the technical approach and reduce risk by developing a proof of concept. From there, we would get into an agile approach of 2-week sprints, where specific user stories are designed, developed, tested, and deployed. We strongly believe in gaining early feedback from end users, so we practice continuous integration and rapid iteration. Once the major development efforts are complete and the app is live, it's time to support, maintain, and enhance the application. It should be expected that 10 to 20% of the overall project effort will continue to be needed to maintain the application. The mobile ecosystem is rapidly evolving with new devices, updated operating systems, and increased expectations. Aspects of a mobile project. This list is illustrative of the major activities involved in developing and supporting a mobile application that interfaces with some back-end or third-party system. Using a waterfall software development methodology, these items would largely be sequential. In an agile development methodology, these items would be undertaken in sprints that tackle one functional component at a time. Requirements gathering is generally at the beginning when you're analyzing the user stories, interviewing the end users and the target audience, and really understanding what you're trying to achieve with the application. And you are documenting the functional and non-functional requirements. And then you get into user interface design, where you'll be creating the wireframes, first low fidelity wireframes, just to understand what functionality is needed on each of the screens, what screens will exist, what's the sitemap of the application, what are the workflows through the application, and then getting into the high fidelity graphics where you're doing that end polish. Of course, on the mobile side, user interface design is very important. People have very high expectations on how the app looks and feels. When it comes to how the app feels, that's where we get into the usability and user experience design. What often helps in this stage is a non-functional prototype. So you take the user interface design that's been created, or even the low fidelity prototype, and get it in the hands of users and start doing some usability testing before you've even done the development in the back end, but just so they can click through the screens, tap through the screens, see where buttons fit, how they lie, how they would go through their common activities, and really emphasizing and tweaking that user experience to make it as enjoyable as possible. When it comes to technical architecture, that's where the system gets designed itself, both at a high level, the different server architectures and infrastructures, the communication layers between them, and then right down to the application layer itself. What platforms will be used, what languages will they be developed in, and what frameworks and libraries could be leveraged. Then on the API design and development side, that's really the communication layer between the client and the server. So almost all of the apps, especially the ones we've been working on, other than things like calculators, they are talking to some back-end system. Whether that's a public API coming from a Twitter or a Facebook or some other public API integrating with a system like Salesforce, or if it's a private API integrating with some custom-made system, there's going to be that communication layer. In many projects, we've worked with clients to design and develop and test that API layer, which is often leveraging their existing API that's used on their websites and tweaking it for the mobile experience. And then, of course, you get into development and testing, which is usually the bulk of the work. And then after the development and testing is complete, you get into deployment and continuous integration. This is what we were saying with that agile methodology of constantly deploying a new build to the end users. Even if it's just a beta build to a select group of people and not getting a production launch in the app stores, it's great to get it in their hands, on their devices. You get to increase your user acceptance testing, get to increase the amount of devices and operating systems that you're testing on. And you get to basically fail early. If there's something wrong, you want to know as early as possible. So we strongly believe in, after every sprint at least, send out a deployed build to your users. And then once it is in the App Store, you've got post-deployment support. So Apple and Android and all of these other vendors are constantly launching new updates to their operating systems and also launching new devices. So when the iPhone 5 came out, for example, it has a new screen size, and so many developers that had developed for the iPhone 4 and previous models, the 3.5-inch screen, they had to launch an update to accommodate the new screen size. And in analytics, the last point there is extremely helpful, and doing analytics is very easy to start. You can get very complicated and very deep into it, but at least the base level of analytics, plugging in an analytics SDK or building in a few measurement points is pretty low effort and a lot of reward. So now when you've built proper analytics into your application and it's in the wild and people are using it, you get to see what devices they're on, what operating system they're on, and that helps you really plan for future support. If it turns out that there are still a lot of your users using an iPad 1, then you'd want to continue to support that. But if a very low percentage of your users are using the iPad 1 or earlier OS versions, like maybe iOS 5.0 or 5.1, you can start to deprecate those and move on to the more advanced devices and OS versions. So throughout that process, here are a few of the key tools that we'd recommend. From a design phase, when you're creating the low fidelity wireframes and then later the high fidelity mockups, Balsamiq and InVision are excellent for visualizing the workflows throughout the mobile application. Once you get into development, you'll be using standard IDEs for your chosen platform. In regards to testing, there's a wide range of solutions and new options are launching very regularly. But some of the tools that we recommend there is Perfecto, where you get an opportunity to test mobile devices in the cloud. You get access to a very wide range of device and OS combinations. Device Anywhere and Soesta are similar. TestLink is a test case management tool. That's kind of an example there. We've used that, and it's excellent to have an online repository of your test cases. It makes test planning, execution, and monitoring your test results a lot more manageable. And then MonkeyTalk is another test automation framework. So there's also a few open source ones that we've been using as well. And so it's really on a project by project or a technology basis on which you determine which tools are best to use. And the final stage, the deployment and support stage, some tools to capture analytics include like Flurry is a great one. There's Crashlytics, Google Analytics. Those are some of the leading on the analytics side. TestFlight is excellent, especially for doing beta deployments. If you have a beta team set up, you can deploy your app to TestFlight and have it dispersed to their devices. So you can say, hey team, there's a new update. Open up TestFlight on your app and install the latest version. And that is integrated with crash logs, and now it has analytics. And it's been an improving platform. It supports both iOS and Android. And we've been heavy users and beta testers on that. So diving a little deeper into mobile testing. So why do mobile testing? Of course, just like any software project, quality assurance is very important. On the mobile testing side, there are major pitfalls to be avoided. Here are just a few examples where major companies either failed to ensure performance, security, or functionality. These are often caused by the wide range of mobile devices out there and the combinations of specific mobile devices to operating systems and to carriers. This matrix of platforms to support is a major challenge for mobile developers and QA teams. To cover this combination of platforms, you'll typically need access to a test lab that has a set of devices similar to this example here. Testing your mobile app or website on physical devices is critical to ensuring that the app performs as expected. Testing in a simulator does not reflect real-world scenarios and should only be used for very high-level QA. If you don't have a test lab like this, there's often test labs in the city where you can get access to devices. And there's also services, like I mentioned before, Perfecto, Soasta, Device Anywhere, where you can do testing in the cloud. So they have a network of devices around the world on local carriers, and you can get access to those devices through your web browser or through desktop software and install your application on those devices, and they are physical devices. And you can check how your application responds in a remote environment. You can spin up a device in Japan or in Australia and make sure that on the local networks your application is functioning as expected. On the testing side, we've got some upcoming webinars where we're going to dive much deeper into both manual testing and test automation on mobile platforms. So with that, let's dive into a few specific case studies. So here we've chosen 3 case studies from recent projects. The first one, we developed a native app for iOS and Android. The second one, we developed a mobile website that supports all modern mobile browsers. And the third one, we did a hybrid app in PhoneGap. So this first application, this is an application called InTouch for a company called iCompass outside of Kamloops, BC. iCompass has a software as a service, a web portal for municipalities. So the municipality of a city or town uses the web portal to track issues reported by citizens. The web portal also does many other things, but in this, we'll just talk about this one piece. And so, for example, if you're a citizen of a city and you're walking down the street and you see a broken street lamp, what you could do previously is you could take a picture of that with your camera and go back to your desktop computer and log into the website and upload your picture and fill out the form and submit that through the web portal. So now what we've done is worked with them to build this mobile client. So a user walking down the street, they would have downloaded the app for their city, and they can go and take a picture of it, take a picture of the issue that they've noticed and fill out the form and submit that form and geotag it with their location in the city. And then that information gets sent to the web portal where the municipality management can see the issue, they can update the status of the issue, they can resolve the issue, and that gets notified to the user as well. So they can the user can not only report issues from their mobile device, but they can see issues around their neighborhood, they can see issues around prospective neighborhoods that they're considering moving to, and they can check the status of these issues. If a user sees an issue that they think is interesting, they can choose to follow that issue and receive notifications on it. So it really increases the transparency of this issue management at a municipality level. In order to build this app, so from a bit of a technical standpoint, this was an iOS and Android app. It was built as a native app, so for iOS, built using Objective-C, and for Android using Java. We basically had two parallel development teams built for both phones and tablets. And on the back-end side, it obviously had to communicate with iCompass's existing web service. And so we worked with their team to design and develop an API and then do the testing as well. When designing and developing an API, of course, performance is really important. On the mobile device, users do not expect to wait very long. On the desktops as well, people expect good performance, but on the mobile side, it's even more critical. So here we worked with them to, once we had the requirements of the application, we knew what the app really had to do. We created a non-functional prototype and did some usability testing and showed that workflow. This is how the application will work. We used Balsamiq for that, and then did the high fidelity graphics and started to design the API that would support the functionality we were looking for. Once the API was designed and tested, we did some more performance testing to make sure that the app would respond quickly. And then iCompass's team was able to do even more performance enhancements on their end to make the AI that much more responsive. The second case study here is for Your Tribute. They're a startup out of Vancouver. They have a memorial website, and they had the desktop version of their website, and then they realized that as people created memorials and shared them with their friends and relatives, that more and more people were opening up those links on their mobile devices. And the mobile experience was certainly not optimal. It was loading the whole desktop site in their mobile device and not giving a good user experience, and it was hard to navigate, a lot of zooming in and out. So what they wanted to do was create a mobile website, and then their longer term vision is to create a native app as well. So in that product roadmap, as we did the strategy and planning, we created a mobile website in such a way that it could later be reused in a native app. And so this mobile website was designed all web languages, HTML5, CSS, jQuery mobile, and designed in such a way that it's not a responsive website. It's not resizing their existing website. It's a completely new mobile experience. So you can see it has the bottom nav bar there with the home and the guest book and the gallery. And it's essentially a viewer of the content on the website. Now down the road, they've got the roadmap to increase the functionality of this. But at this point, it was launched for iOS and Android browsers, and also tested on BlackBerry and Windows phones, so supporting the major mobile devices. And then this third example is an example of a hybrid application. So SustainNet is another independent software vendor out of Vancouver that has software for stake track. It's called Stake Tracker. It's for stakeholder management. So keeping track of communications with stakeholders, a project team on specific issues, and logging events and communications associated with events. And it's a lot of people in the field that are having communications and then having to get those communications entered into the system. So previously they would have their communications with different stakeholders, write down on a piece of paper, go back to the office and input that into the system, or hand it off to a data entry person. But now they can actually take their device into the field, and they can have a communication, and they can fill out the form right then and send it to the back office. So here they were seeking iOS and Android app, but on the roadmap is more platforms as well. And the functionality required by the application didn't justify needing a native app. So building a hybrid application and doing an extra emphasis on some of the riskier areas of doing a hybrid application, such as user experience, usability, performance, making it look and feel more like a native app than a website, even though you're using web languages, with a greater emphasis on that. We were able to build this using PhoneGap and deploy it on iOS and Android smartphones with very deep integration with their SaaS product and a high level of security. So the approach here was to gather the requirements, do the mock-ups in Balsamiq, get a non-functional prototype that users can see. They can see screen by screen how the workflows are going to happen, and then start to design the API based on that. And here the API was certainly more complicated than the InTouch API. There's quite a few more touch points, quite a few more relationships between things, and much larger data sets. And so the API was designed, developed, and tested very carefully with those larger data sets in mind. And an application itself built in PhoneGap. So about 90% of the code itself is all web languages, HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. And then there's small elements of the code, around 10%, that are a native code. So in order to use some of the native functionality or some of the native UI concepts, use native code for that. And then package it in the native IDEs like Xcode and Eclipse, and deploy it to platforms iOS and Android. So those are just 3 case studies, the 3 different types of examples. We'd be happy to dive deeper if you have any questions on those. A little bit about Optimist to wrap up today's webinar. So we're BC's largest outsourcing firm with delivery centers in Canada and India. We have a team of designers, business analysts, developers, and testers experienced on iOS, Android, Windows Phone, BlackBerry, and the mobile web. On the mobile web side, we mean mobile websites and hybrid applications using technologies like PhoneGap, Sencha Touch. Our primary focus is on mid-sized technology and enterprise organizations in North America. And we like to be a true extension of a client's delivery team. So what we mean by that is that if the client has a strong design team, we might be their development team. Or if they've got a strong iOS team and they need some extra help on the Android side, we can play that role as well. So we're very flexible to a client's needs and to a client's delivery cycles. Some of our clients in and around Vancouver and BC and Canada, North America as a whole. You might recognize some different clients there. One emphasis here is that we're fairly industry agnostic. We're more on the technology side, working on quite a few different industries. So thank you very much for attending today's webinar. I hope you sign up for future webinars where we'll dive deeper into some of the more technical topics, dive deeper into testing, test automation, and even requirements gathering and those sorts of processes. So please visit our website, let us know what topics you'd like covered in webinars, and we'd be happy to connect.